Well, tell me what you know about how hunts was started and kind of related. It was your family, but was it grandfather?
Yes, my grandfather. Yeah. Well, back in World War One, end of World War One, there was a group of when the soldiers returned, they wanted to have a football team, and my grandfather, my great grandfather, Colonel Ben Hunt, had Hunt's Drugstore, and it was actually on the corner where Stone's was, on the corner of Broadway and 8th Street. And the drugstore had been selling some fishing tackle, and so they had a little bit of contacts with some sporting goods. And so, but they had and this is, I have a reprint of in the Messenger, where there was when they first started selling the equipment, they had baseballs, and they were throwing baseballs into the street to give them away. The kids who grabbed one it was theirs. And a little boy didn't get a baseball, but he ended up with a torn knee on his pants. So he was in tears a little bit and walking down Broadway, and Watsy, or Watsy's father at C and Wilson clothing store, saw him and was they were contemporaries with Colonel Ben, and I think they had a desk drawer bottle sharing situation as well. And so he said, well, what happened? And the boy said, well, I tried to get a baseball and I didn't get one. Well, so Mr. C put a note and said, take this down and give it to Colonel Ben. And so he went down and said after all his hard work, he didn't get a baseball, but he did tear his britches. So Colonel Ben Hunt gave him a note to carry back to Mr. C. And the little boy went home with a new suit of clothes and a baseball and a glove, or something. He got the baseball and also got a new suit of clothes, is what the article says. So, and then some years later, the drugstore, the sporting goods got to be so large that it moved down to 115 in the middle of the block, and that's where I remember the store mostly. So then the drugstore was closed or sold to Stone's. But
how did he expand the business beyond Mayfield and Graves County?
I really don't know all of it. I mean, he had good contacts, and he was a salesman. He would ask for the sale, but and he ended up selling. He was calling on, I don't know that, I guess he was getting out on the road, calling on schools, knocking on doors, and in those days there wasn't a whole lot of dealers. The football really didn't start until the turn of the century, and so there wasn't a need for it. But then, because of when they first started in the early 20s, in the 1919 or 18, no, that's really when the baseball story was. But he ended up hiring. When I can remember, at one point there were 3 salesmen. One lived in Louisville and called on schools up there, and it was. But then, and that didn't last a whole long time. But we had Roy Boyd was one of the salesmen, and then Jim Mitchell, and.
I've heard that your grandfather was close to Adolph Rupp.
He knew Coach Rupp, he knew Bear Bryant, and yeah, he was doing a lot with UK, and we actually ended up, Spencer, my little brother, we used to have an old UK official game jersey, one that I don't know if it was too small, there was something, it was a smaller, made wrong probably. And I do remember a story once and a lot of the stuff was on bid at that time. They advertise bids, and the low bid would get it. But then the coach always had an out where there was a clause. And one of the stories was that if you had a problem with a Converse, in those days it was the Converse All-Star was the only basketball shoe. And my grandfather was told, I can buy basketballs from you, but I can't buy shoes, because if we have a problem with a shoe, you can't get it to us overnight or the next day if we need a shoe the next day. But
and also that your dad, your grandfather was able to get Rupp to come to Mayfield for like athletic banquets and things like that.
yeah. And of course that was a recruiting trip as well. He would be tied into a recruiting trip, and so that was, and a couple other. I don't know that Bear Bryant was here, ever came here, but Rupp did.
So he obviously established a relationship with Bryant when Bryant was at UK. Did he maintain it when he went to Alabama?
I don't believe we ever sold much into much Kentucky, Western Kentucky, mostly, and Western Tennessee. Not really down to Memphis, but in the smaller counties, the small counties. West Tennessee was that was where our main business was. You know, well, I can remember going into the store. I was born in '51, and in the late '50s, all of that we remodeled the downtown store, and the stairway that was in the front. I really don't remember the front stairway very much, but there used to be there were oak cabinets lined the front display area, and I actually have 2 of those oak counters still, and I have a spittoon, and I've got an oak hat rack. It was all matched the stairway, and the front stairway was taken out, and where Arthur and I grew up was on Pryor Street, and when my little brother was born, that front stairway was added to the house, put in a back stairway, and so it's still there on Pryor Street, that stairway in the back hallway.